And I'm Amy Smith, I'm a Foundation 2 teacher at Jumeirah.
And we're here to give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour. It is quite brief, but it's just an overview of how we use objective-led planning to provide challenge through our continuous provision and suit our children's needs within the classroom.
Okay, so our 3 aims, I mean you can read them on the board, but it's basically to explain what objective-led planning is. We're going to be sharing how we've developed that in our school and share the planning pro forma that we have developed which works for us. And we're also going to give you some ideas about how you can provide challenge to your children through the continuous provision.
Okay, to get you talking then this morning, we've provided you with a picture of the display. On your tables, we want you to talk about the learning that has gone on behind this display and possibly the objectives that the children might be meeting by producing the work on the display. So just talk about, from that display, what learning process has actually happened to create that display. So we're going to give you about 3 minutes just to have a chat and get yourselves to know each other on your tables. Okay, does anybody display? Anyone big brains? What could the children possibly be learning about?
Colours.
Colours, yes? Emotions. Yeah, one emotion, possibly. Yeah.
Probably we were all happy at the time.
Yeah. Okay, we looked at this kind of display and we thought actually it's not really clear what the children have been learning to produce this display. It's not actually allowed the children any sort of creativity or ownership at all. If the topic was plants or flowers, for example, why would every child need to do exactly the same plants? Plants are not identical in the environment. So the children have not been given any scope for their creativity. There's been a template given. If it was even a skill like fine motor, where there's colouring in has been a skill, or the rolling up of paper, there's been no differentiation at all. Now, we looked at displays like this and we thought within our school, sometimes, not all of the time, but sometimes we were very much driven by the end product, about what display we might want to produce, or what might be going into the books and what might look nice. We then did some research into best practice in the UK and we looked at objective-led planning. Now, objective-led planning means that the learning process is important and that the children have the learning differentiated to their needs, and it is actually specific for the children within your classroom or within your cohort. So we decided to adopt this approach so that we are differentiating for the children in our class, and we're no longer concerned about what the end product is and what the goal is, but actually the learning process that's taken place. We also thought that objective-led planning would allow us to better tailor our learning environments to our children's needs within our classrooms.
Now, these are some pictures from our class last term. We want you to look at them, hopefully you'll be able to see them, and talk about the learning process that has taken place this time. As you can see, there isn't really a final product, but we'd like you to have a think about what the children are doing and why they might be doing it.
And what objectives possibly they might be covering here.
So again, a couple of minutes just to chat on your tables. Yeah. Okay, if everyone can stop, if you could share what any of your ideas, hopefully it was clear enough for you. Fine motor, exploring colours. Yep. Yeah, mixing colours. So what we were looking at initially is just colour mixing. We didn't have a final product. We literally covered a tough spot in paper and let the children explore. And from that, we sat back and looked at what they could do already as a sort of an assessment for learning tool. We then moved on, and one day we added different textures to the table. We've got sand, we've got flour, we've got glitter, we've got glue. And so one of the objectives is about working with different textures, so they could add texture to their paint and talk about it. We also looked at using different tools, so not having to always use a paintbrush. They were painting with toothpicks, which was again differentiated the fine motor skills. They were painting with hairbrushes and toothbrushes. It wasn't just a paintbrush. And there wasn't a final product. You know, this was left out. The children might have painted Superman or Spider-Man or some, Elsa. It didn't matter what they painted. What we wanted to see was how we could develop their colour mixing and using different tools to create. So the creativity was completely open for them. There was no end product. Okay, so we don't expect you to read what's on here. This is just to show you our planning pro forma that we've developed. Now, as Stacey said, we went online and looked at lots of different people in the UK and what they were using. And what we've developed works for us as a school. We're not saying that this will work for everybody, and we are changing this as we're going. It's definitely a work in progress. So basically, we have 2 or 3 of these plans for a week's worth of teaching. We decide on what areas we're going to focus on those weeks based on our assessment data. So it might not be maths every single week that we have a directed plan. This one, that you've got this on your table, we've actually annotated it. It looks like this. So in your leisure, you can have a read through that. So, where am I? As you can see, it's just one sheet, it's very clear, it's very simple. So we're going to move on from that and now break it down. Now the top of the plan is where we have our clear area for learning. So for this example, we've got mathematics. We then break it down to what strand of mathematics it is, and this is number. Now, our children, we found we needed to work on recognising numbers. So we didn't state here which numbers they need to learn, because we have a massive range in our year group. So we just have a very general objective of to recognise numbers. From that, we generally have data from previous teaching or assessments of where our children are. If it's an objective that you haven't assessed yet, this is where we will write down ideas of what we can do in the classroom to find out where our children are. And we also write down adult, teacher, whole class inputs, what we're going to do throughout the week. So for example, we've got Numicon interactive whiteboard software. We will show the children a number, and then they have to hold up the corresponding Numicon piece, or it might be you call out a number and they've got to hold it up. So you're getting a really quick idea of where your children are. Your TA might be sitting there with an assessment grid, which is on the back. And they might be taking quick assessment notes or highlighting traffic lighting, green if they're recognising numbers to 20, pink if they're only recognising numbers to 5, for example. So you've got a really quick idea of where your next steps are for learning. Okay.
Okay, from there, then what we do is we think about that overall objective that we had to recognise numerals. We've obviously done our assessment for learning. That might be from prior data, it might be from whole class inputs, and we've got that class grid. We know where each of our children are working at. So then what we do is we differentiate the objective down. So we think about our lower ability children, what do they need to do? Now if I've got a cluster of children in my class that are working on recognising numerals 1 to 5 still, then I would pencil their names in against that. So I'm typing in these after, or writing these in after I've done those assessment for learning activities, because obviously you don't know how to differentiate that objective for your children until you've assessed them and you know exactly where they are. So our lower ability children were still working on recognising numerals 1 to 5. Our sort of average ability child was recognising numerals 1 to 10. Our more able to 20. And then for an extension, we're looking at sort of place value and understanding tens and units. Sometimes for the extension of the more able children, we may not even be looking at development matters, we might be looking at the year 1 curriculum, because obviously it's where your children in your class are and where they need to be pushed onto. So we're getting most of these objectives from development matters, either the 30 to 50, 40 to 60, early learning goals, and then also looking into the year 1 curriculum if we need to. So then from that assessment grid, we're penciling in the names next to those objectives. Now this objective you need to bear in mind is where your children are going to. It's an aim, a next step for your child. It's not necessarily where they're currently working at, so it's where their next step is. We do pencil in those names, and we're very, very flexible on that, because as the week goes on, we may change where those children are working to. You've done possibly a one-off assessment or a couple of assessments. Assessments aren't always correct. Those children might have been having a bad day, or been having a particularly good day, and actually when you're doing things with them throughout the week, you realise they need to go back a step or move on a step. So be free to move those children around. So once we've got that, we know where the children are working to, we know their next steps. Then in the black here, you can see we've thought about some teacher-led activities. So we tend to sort of think about 4 or 5 teacher-led activities that are going to meet the needs of the different children in your class. So we might have a teacher-led activity that's more focused obviously on the lower ability, one that's more focused on the average, one that's more focused on the more able. We try to think of a range of activities because obviously we want to engage the children, we want to tailor the activities to their interests. So we try and think of different activities that will suit the children within our class and the children that are within those groups. From then on, so these are the ones that we will actually work with the children to do, and we will model, and that's how we will directly teach the children these skills. Underneath that in the blue is all our ideas for our continuous provision and to enhance our continuous provision. So then we're thinking about possibly a topic that we might be covering. We're thinking about the interests of our children within our class at that time, and we're thinking about the objective always. So we're thinking about activities that are going to meet the objective, but are going to interest and engage the children. Again, we're trying to write down as many things as possible. If recognising numerals is an area of development within your class, you need to make sure that the children have got ample opportunity to meet that objective, not just through your teacher-led activities, but through your continuous provision as well. So we will be putting number in all our areas, as Amy said, not just in the number area or the maths area. It will be in the sand, it will be in the water, it will even be numbers in the writing area. You know, they will be everywhere, so that we're giving children ample opportunity to actually meet these objectives.
And just to state, you know, we don't always have all these ideas down. It would take us ages. This is just an example for you to give you lots of ideas. Okay, so now we're going to give you a turn to have a go and to have a feel for our planning format. Now, on your table, we've put an A3. We've blown it up to A3 as you're working in groups. And we've actually also, leave it there, we've also given you a topic. Now, it's important to mention that some schools have predetermined topics. You're told that you have to follow, you have to do growing followed by ourselves. Some schools are very flexible and you get to choose topics and what the children would like to learn about. And that's the way we're trying to go. So for example, we've got Toy Story, we've got Frozen, we've got Little Mermaid, we've got bugs and racing cars. And they're just things that our children are interested in at the moment. And for today's activity, just to make it a bit quicker and a bit easier, we've given you two. You can choose which one you're going to base your planning on. And what we'd like you to do first is have a look at the top. So we've given you a literacy area of writing to focus on today, and we've already put an objective in there for you, which comes from the Development Matters statements, which we've also put on your table here, which is stapled together. And this is the planning. This is the plan that we follow from the UK. What we'd like you to do first is to think about what you could do if you didn't already know where your children were. What could you do in your classroom to find out, as an assessment, find out where they are with this objective? So it's to attempt to write short sentences in meaningful context. So we want you to first of all think about that, and then we would like you to break down the objective for a lower ability, a middle and a higher. So again, you need to use the Development Matters. We're not making up objectives. We're looking at this document and we're thinking about, you know, you're going to have a range on your table. Some of you might be from Foundation 1, some of you might be from Foundation 2, but we're aiming this really around Foundation 2 just for today. So we want you to think about here a lower ability objective and a more able objective, and just handwrite those in for us, and then we'll move on after that. Me and Stacey are going to circulate if you have any questions or if anything.
We haven't put an extension down because we haven't given you the national curriculum, the Year 1 objective. So we are just looking at a lower ability, average ability, and middle ability. That might be different within your schools, but if you just look at the main objective, possibly if you think of that as being either your more able or your able objective, and then you can sort of go from there to know where to pitch the other objectives. Okay, it's just you having a go at thinking about the assessment for learning and how then you'll differentiate that objective. And we'll have a look around and see what you're doing.
Okay. I'm just going to let them have a little look first, and then I'll...
Beginning to write words,
and also I'll say that's an opportunity. Yeah, so first you need to sort of think about how are you going to find out where your children are already. So for us, we did once, we just put out rolls of paper on the floor with loads of mark making tools and just said, go and write. You might want to think about something like that you might do.
We have to take our objectives from here.
Yes, yes. So these, for example, I just said to the other group, writing, you generally know where your children are because
Now this is...
You might have children who are only sometimes given to hear and say the initial sounds. You might have children who are beginning...
This can be the lower
so that could be, yeah. I mean, this is just for you to...
Objective, we write it over
just
here.
write, yeah, you just write into here, yeah.
And the activity.
Are you okay here?
We've chosen this topic.
where the children are at, so we give them that photo and ask them to write.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something we did as well. I mean, generally with writing, writers put big rolls of paper on the floor with pens and pencils and said, today on a Sunday, we want you to go and write what you did at the weekend. And then from that writing, they're writing all the time, so you know which children are only writing initially. Big rolls of paper out before on the floor and just said on a Sunday, today you all need to go and write something that are only writing words, which ones are only writing initial sounds. So it's just something really simple like that. Yeah. Are you okay with the objectives?
Or we can write our own objectives as well.
Yeah, so this is one that this is our main focus.
Main focus.
All right, yeah. I mean for us this is sentences. So
This is a teacher what you were planning to do the sentence.
to write what your lower ability objective is. So it might be that they're using, so when you look at meaning to marks,
Okay,
they're
yeah,
only
already
mark.
low ability.
Yeah, or it might be that your lower ability is saying the and writing. We just wanted to sort of share with you, we've both been around and I think we've chatted to every group to see what you've been doing. Now, I said, you know, in writing, generally you know where your children are because you're writing all the time. They're writing in their play, you know which children are writing initial sounds and you know which children are writing sentences. But if you still weren't sure, we've used like in IKEA you can get the big cheap rolls of paper. We roll that across the floor like this. This was on the floor. We gave them pens and pencils and different writing tools, not just pencils. They love writing with felt tips. And we just said on a Sunday, today at some point we want you to come in and write what you did at the weekend. So then at the end of the day, we could look at that and see which children were only writing initial sounds, which children were beginning to write sentences, which children were even beginning to use some punctuation, you know, if you've got those real extensions. So it gave you a good idea the next day of where you need to go. This again was a little boy. He just went to our writing area where we have paper, pens and everything, and he just sat there on the creative table just starting to write. So even in their play, that's happening all the time. So you've got continuous assessment of where those children are. Okay, I think we can move on. The next step, Stacey's going to explain.
This is the fun part, I think. So you're thinking now of, you've got your assessment for learning ideas. You know what you're going to do as a whole class, and you know what observations you're going to make. So make sure that you know exactly where the next steps are for the children in your class. You've differentiated your objectives, so you're knowing exactly where each child is moving on to. Now you need to think about the activities that you're going to actually tailor to your children. So what we want you to do, first of all, and it's in this box, activities, is to think of some teacher-led activities that you might do with your children. So thinking about for your lower ability children, if they are the children that are beginning to make marks and now actually need to be moving on to writing some initial sounds, what activity could you do? Thinking about your average ability children, thinking about your higher sort of ability children and what you're going to do with them. Please try to write down sort of 3, 4, maybe 5 ideas for a teacher-led activity, because it might be different what you do with different groups of children depending on their interests. And then underneath that, we'd like you just to make a list of as many ideas as you can of things that you could put in your continuous provision to enhance your provision. So things that might be around your classroom that's going to encourage those children to meet these objectives. Make sure you've always got the objectives in mind and make sure you've got your children in mind. As we said earlier, we've given you topics on your table. So it might be if you've got Frozen and Toy Story, you're thinking about things that you can put in your continuous provision linked to those topics that are going to excite the children. If you've got children in your class at the moment that are really into Star Wars, then think of that by all means. We just gave you the topics as a sort of idea that you can use. So maybe 4 or 5 teacher-led activities that you would actually do with the children to progress their learning, and then as many ideas as you can think of that you can put in and around your classroom to make sure that there are ample opportunities for your children to be meeting this learning objective. So it's literally an idea of sort of mind mapping as many ideas as you can. So again, we'll come around and sort of see what you're doing, but write down as much as you can.
Just as an example, like our lower ability are generally boys and they love Star Wars. So recently in the writing area, we put out Star Wars and they had to label the characters. So just as a little idea, it doesn't have to be the topic you've got. These were things that our children are interested in.
Something that we put out quite often, we'll show you some pictures in a bit, but what we put out quite often is like little books. So if we're working on a book for for example, or a little book about Frozen, and we just make sort of little A5 books and it has Frozen on the front, they can put their name as the author, and then inside it's up to them what they're doing, if they're making marks, if they're writing sentences, so that's quite a nice idea as well. But thinking about getting writing into all areas. My boys, for example, are always in the construction area, don't like to come out of the construction area, so what I did was put some clipboards in the construction area with sort of, design outlines or templates on there, and said to them, oh, is this your building? Do you know what real people do when they're constructing? They're architects and they're doing a design first and they label it and then they make it. And my boys were really inspired by that, so they were then drawing their model, labelling it and then making it.
And that might be your adult-led activity. It doesn't have to be sat at a table. You might be in the construction area with those boys because that's where they are and they won't know they're learning.
Okay, so off you go, think of as many ideas as you can.
Okay, so which topic have you got a topic in mind that your children are interested in, or are you using one of the ones that are on the table?
We'll use this.
Yeah, the Frozen. So just to have a think about what you could do to lead those children, to get them interested in writing. So like we said before, you might even have boxes next to the characters and they've got to label what they are. And we sometimes leave that in the writing area and just see who goes to do it and then intervene and then sit by them and sort of that you could put in the classroom that would really engage them. Okay.
Like that with speech bubbles, and then getting them to think about what the characters might be saying to each other, or if we've watched a clip and then recall what the characters said to each other, and so what the rainbow fish said to the octopus.
And we sometimes even like that, I'm sure you do as well, you get a letter through the door and Little Mermaid's has sent us a message and she wants us to do something for her, so it might you can involve the writing, so it might mean I need someone to design me a new dress, can you do it, and then label and describe it. This is very girly, that's why we might have two different things going on. Obviously the boys wouldn't be doing mermaids, but are you okay here then?
Why would we just brainstorm?
That's the idea, yeah, just write everything down. Yeah, did it make sense what we were trying to get across there? We used to have sometimes, like if it was princesses or Star Wars, we sometimes, if they're learning just to write words or initial sounds, we'll put, can you label the characters? We also sometimes have a character and put a speech bubble next to it and they've got to write what the character might say. We sometimes send letters to the class and, Sleeping Beauty has asked if you can make a magic spell to make at the beginning, this is where we'll put what we're going to do to assess if we need to, but it'll also be what we do as a whole class. So you'd write down your whole class input, so modelling writing sentences, or it might be you've got a lesson to do that.
That's a whole class.
Yeah, the whole class activities we would do here when they're all sitting on the mat, or it might be you've got two small groups and you're doing a circle time. Okay. And then this is purely what you're going to lead as an adult, or playing.
This you do in small groups, right?
Small groups, sometimes though. We've got children in a role play area writing, we've got children in the background, you can see.
They choose their own activities.
They choose their own activities, and we also have a teaching assistant, but they get the rest of playing. We will then go into the play, so we would go into the construction area and there might be a group of 5 boys. But you
just to lead them.
Yeah, but in that group you might have a really high ability child and a low ability. I'll mention that to everybody. Okay. No, one assistant, yes. Yeah. You can go into the play and it might be a mixed ability group that you're with.
Or sometimes, you have your high ability in one group and, your low ability in another group.
Yes.
But we generally try to mix them.
I think it's nice to mix.
Peers can help them.
Exactly, yeah. Whatever works in your school.
Yeah, because earlier I used to do the low ability in one.
Yes.
And the low would go low.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody to,
Yeah, mixed ability works really well. Yeah. Yeah, and even in this small world, within that small world, we tend to have a box. So saying there'll be a picture of a dinosaur on the front that say "My Little Book," and inside they can mark make. So yeah, we've labelling pictures. Yeah, we've done a caveman, you know, back in the day, and they've asked them to list the when you're doing it with the whole class. So, you know, when you've got them all on the mat and you make it exciting, you know, anything that tries to make it a bit more engaging. 15 minutes. Thank you.
If we can just stop you there, everybody's got some really, really good ideas, lots of things that we've discussed ourselves as well. What we just want you to clarify is, obviously, when we're doing our teacher-led activity, you've written down the names of the children in each area of what objective they're working towards, so you know what they need to do. You've got a planned activity in mind that you're going to do with them. What we try to do in the setting, we generally have a very big garden, and we have the central area of our classroom with all our continuous provisions set up constantly. The children are accessing that all day. And then what we try to do is pull off the children that aren't so engaged in their learning to work as a teacher-led group with us, because we know what objective they're working towards. So whether we're working with 2 children or 4 children, we have a little group that we're working with. The whole rest of the class are engaging with that continuous provision. So they're looking at all the opportunities that you put out to meet that objective through their own learning. If I'm heads down working with the group, we would say that my TA is what we call heads up, so she is making observations of those children in their continuous provision, in their child-led learning. It might be sometimes as well that all of your children are fully engaged in the continuous provision, and then instead of pulling them out and distracting them, you go to them and take the learning objective to them. You know what that learning objective is that you need to work on. So if they are in the construction area, like I said, I might go to them with my clipboards and say, oh, I want to design a building, but I don't know how to label it. Could anybody help me? And you're going in and getting involved in their learning rather than dragging them away from something they're fully engaged in. So it's not that we have a sort of conveyor belt of one group and then the next group and we're distracting the children. We try very much to, their child-initiated learning is very important, and we either take the learning to them, the objective to them, or pull off those children that aren't so engaged. Often when you set up an activity on a table, you find that lots of children come to you and want to do it because they want to be engaged in what you're doing. There's others that won't, so then you take the learning to them.
And a lady on this table said about mixed ability. You know, we don't always take the lower ability altogether. Like Stacey said, you might go to the construction area and you've got a really more able boy and he's aiming at writing sentences, and you've got a lower ability who's only writing initial sounds. So you've got to juggle those children and differentiate it while you're there with them. And I think you also said about this plan. This plan might take, you know, you might do a few children each day and it's over the week. You might try and get through all the children in one day if you can. I mean, I don't know what your timetables are like, so it's very flexible. That's why we only tend to do 2 or 3 per week. So we know by the end of the week, we really know where those children are in those 3 areas, as well as observations that go on. Okay, we've sort of finished talking about the planning now, and we just want to share a few other ideas. You know, like we've said already, it's typical we keep saying the boys, but you always have girls who are always in the colouring area, colouring in. They're nice and calm, but are they actually learning anything? They're colouring every day. So we tend to we put an example on your table of a challenge card. Now, we trialled this last academic year, and we've started it again this year. I want to make it clear that this is optional for the children. We don't say to them, you have to do everything on the sheet by the end of the week. It is there to hopefully make them a bit more self-motivated. It's also there to help those children who flit around a lot and don't really focus and find it hard to settle. And it's also good for those boys again, or those girls. Oh gosh. It's also good for those children who are always in the same area. If the girls are always in the colouring area or the boys are always outside in the garden, it encourages them, because we've got maths activities, phonics, writing, creative, and there's also another area where they can create their own challenge. So they're having to think about their own learning, and we're quite strict on that. They'll come back and do something very easy, and we'll go, oh, you know, did that really challenge you? Let's think about what you're trying to work on. Could you do this? So that's something we use, and we sort of say if they've done so many challenges, they get a sticker or they get a prize, so there's a bit of a motivation for them, and we sign off. So they if they found the challenge easy, they'll circle it green. At this age, they tend to circle everything green because they like to think that they're good at everything. But it's more just for them. As you'll find as the year goes on, they actually get a lot more honest about it. And then we also tend to say once they've completed the challenge, we sign it and we check it off. Otherwise, they'll go, we've done it all, in 5 minutes. So we make sure that the quality's there as well for them. Another thing, this is our construction area, so again, we put a big whiteboard in there and mark making tools and hats, just to engage those boys. Here they were drawing a plan of a house, and from that we then said, oh, can you label it? And we took a picture, so there wasn't writing It doesn't always have to be writing on paper. We take pictures and put them in books or send them home, or we have online learning journals. So this is another one. These are what we said about the little books. So we were learning about what the ladybird heard, and they were loving Eric Carle's stories, so we went on that sort of way. We did little books of ladybirds, so non-fiction writing. This is this isn't actually our classroom because it's a picture online, but ours is very similar to this. It's open, we've got different mark making tools, we have paper, we have whiteboards, blackboards, magic boards, and that's again where they can just pick up paper and do it whenever they like. Next one, Stace. This is some examples. This is this Christmas from my classroom. Role play, we always have lots of writing opportunities. This was a Santa's workshop. They were writing Christmas cards and orders, what they had to make for Santa. And this, we always have a phonics area set up, which it's not an empty table, it has something out there, and it generally is on the challenge cards, what they need to complete. So, Stace, go back please. Rambling on. For example, this one was a sack which had things that they needed to fill for Santa, so they had to read the word and put it inside. Next one. Again, more from our phonics area. We use a website called phonicsplay.com. There are some free resources on there. You can also pay to use more, but the free ones are very good. And you can print out resources, so this is an Ob and Bob game. We also write in, shaving foam and all different malleable materials. I'm going to put it on the next slide for you so you can write it down. And again, small world's really important. So it's the talk for writing. They're not actually writing, but they're having to talk about it. And again, having to speed through. But writing on mirrors, using locks and keys. Can they read the word and unlock it with the picture that matches? Can they use the hammers to smash the high frequency words? And fine motor sewing to help with their pencil control and pencil grip and strength. And this is just some ideas of where you can look online. This is where we've got our inspiration from. ABC does. He came to Dubai recently and did a course, so we got lots of our ideas from him. And these are some other websites that we use. We're on Twitter. You can follow us. Pinterest, that's where I'm a bit of a Pinterest addict. There's loads of ideas on there for what you can put out in your classroom. And the other ones are all blogs. Ace Early Years here. This is where we took our plannings. We haven't copied their planning profile and we've changed it, but we definitely took a lot of ideas from them. And they've got a YouTube channel which they share their ideas through as well, so you can, look at those sorts of things. I'll leave that one up there so you can write it down. But the main two things we want you to take away today is just to make sure that your planning is purely objective-led and it's tailored to your individual needs of your children, and to make sure that your learning is fun and engaging and linked to their interests. So, do you have any questions? Or if you do, you can stay behind and ask if you don't want to.
Thank you very much. There is an evaluation form on your tables. They'd really like you to fill in the evaluation form before you leave.
Can you please fill all of this with each one of you? And I will do that and give a certificate.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you all very much. Hopefully you found it valuable. We've got something from it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.